And we work on this project together. It was funded by what is called the seed money fund to bring people together to develop a new idea with maybe some innovative potential and to cooperate between the global north and the global south, find commonalities and differences in human-wildlife interactions in different contexts. Okay, so a bit of the background, our reasoning. There was this drastic decline of... Is this better? Yeah. Drastic decline of biodiversity, and the decline itself is also increasing over time. That's a huge problem, the biodiversity crisis. And at the same time, by all different means, humans are taking up a bigger part of the land surface for whatever land use, and this is just an example. And the consequence is that, you know, interactions between wildlife and humans tend to increase. And just having nature reserves reserved for wildlife, that's not enough to combat the biodiversity decline. So there is this challenge, and that's sharing landscapes between humans and wildlife, because landscapes, that's where the interactions occur. It's not abstract, it's concrete in landscapes. So our aim is to develop a landscape perspective and use it in research for conservation to contribute to human-wildlife coexistence. That's the aim of the project. So I'm going to explain how we arrived at this perspective, and we take a step back, we go to philosophy, and more specifically ontology, which is a branch of philosophy studying things that exist on a very abstract level. And one of the questions ontologists have asked themselves in the past is like, hey, are there different ways in which things can exist? For example, maybe you love your parents, and that love exists, but it exists in a very different way than the way this chair exists. So that's one thing philosophers have done, make a categorization of different ways in things, in which things exist. And there is some general consensus, not every individual agrees, that there are basically three fundamentally different ways. So things can exist in a material way, like this chair, and it has some material properties. Things can also exist in a social way. For example, there is a social rule that we all share, that if somebody presents, we are not going to shout at everybody. That's a social rule. It's not a law even. You won't go to jail if you shout. So if you feel a need, do it now. You will be fine. You only corrupt this presentation, that's all. But social rules, they don't exist materially. They exist as some kind of agreement between people who are part of a culture. And then there is also another way, and that's the way in which mental things exist. All our thoughts, emotion, everything that exists in our conscious mind. So this is not new. We took that as an existing categorization, an existing ontology, and we took that to think about landscapes, to develop our landscape perspective. Importantly, it's simple, it's a simple categorization, but it is a strong claim. It claims like there are really no two or no four different ways, but exactly these three different ways in which things can exist. Some things are very, very complex. They exist across these three different realms that together make up reality. For example, if we think about communication, I express words. That's a material event. And you can understand those words because we share the same rules, that if I say the word chair, we know what it refers to. So we are guided by social rules in our interpretation, and then it evokes an experience. You think about a chair, or you experience the concept of chair. So some things encompass all these three realms. Humans do that too. We have material bodies, We are part of cultures with social rules, and we also have a conscious mind with experiences. So we can apply this to landscape, and that's where these terms come from: matterscape, powerscape, and Mindscape. So matterscape then simply is the landscape as it exists in the material reality. Powerscape is the landscape in social reality, or the social realm, actually. I use the word real, although I forget it sometimes, to denote that these are not separate realities. These are three different domains of one reality. A Mindscape is then the landscape as it exists in the mental realm. And these three realms, these three scapes, have very different properties, ways of being. So if we go to the next slides, this is basically explaining something more about that ontology, landscape ontology. So matterscape, it exists in the material realm, and it exists objectively. That means this chair has properties, or a tree in the landscape has properties that are as they are, no matter what we think about it, no matter whether we observe it or not. It is as it is. In that sense, it is independent from our subjective appraisal. Of course, different people can have different ideas about objective reality, but those ideas are not part of material reality. They are mental or maybe social. So it exists objectively. That means that a particular geographical location, its matterscape, it's the same for all of us, regardless whether we know it or what we think about it. And it's also the same for humans and for wildlife. We share just one matterscape. It's made of matter, of course, and we can, in simple words, conceive matterscape as the landscape as an object. Powerscape exists in the social realm. It's intersubjective. It's shared by a number of people, basically made up by social rules, a set of social rules. So we need to organize our behavior in landscapes. You cannot just cut a tree in the garden of your neighbor, for example. You can't just do whatever you want. It's a very fine-grained set of rules that regulate how we behave with respect to the landscape, and that is absolutely necessary to make things work. Since it's intersubjective, and this is important, at the same geographical location, different cultures can have different powerscapes, different sets of rules they project onto the landscape. And we saw a great example in this morning's presentation. For example, hunting rules. There is the official law, that's a set of social rules, but there are also particular cultures within South Africa which have also social rules. It's not absence of rules, they have different rules, cultural rules. So different groups of people can have different powerscapes at the same location. And that makes it difficult. So if we have disagreement about matterscape, maybe fact-finding would be a strategy. If we have disagreement about powerscape, fact-finding doesn't work. It's a fact that different groups have different cultures, different set of social rules. It's about politics, maybe. It's an entirely different discussion. So that's the relevance of this ontology. It already anticipates, on a very abstract level, strategies that sometimes work and sometimes don't work when a particular issue, challenge, or question arises. So powerscape, simple word, is landscape as an organization. I got 5 minutes, so I will stick to that. Thank you. Finally, Mindscape, it exists in the mental realm. It's subjective. Somebody can like a tree and somebody else can dislike the same tree, and there was no right or wrong. It's just different because it exists in the individual mind. And we can conceive of that as landscape as a story. So I anticipated already a little bit what I call, with an expensive word, epistemology. So ontology is about what is, epistemology is how can we get a knowledge, and when is knowledge valid? Those are the questions of epistemology. They address knowledge. It's important, this ontology, because it also has repercussions for epistemology. And one important thing is validity claims. So if you make a claim about matterscape, it is valid if it is true. But we can't judge claims about powerscape in the same way. You can't say it is true that one should not cut a tree. It's just. So justness and different justnesses can coexist next to each other and can present problems. If it's true, then it's true for everybody, no matter what individuals believe. In powerscape, if a rule is just, then it's just for members of that particular social group. And another social group interacting with the same matterscape, the same landscape, can have another set of social rules, which is just within that group. And Mindscape, claims about Mindscapes are valid if they are truthful. So if one is sincere about the individual judgments or experiences, then the claim one makes is valid. So, as an example, a fence. In matterscape, it's made of woods. In powerscape, it is something that people who understand the social rule might interpret it as a division between public and private space, so you should not go further. And in Mindscape, well, some person might like it, and the other might find it, the design, not so great. This fence works in powerscape, basically. We can jump over it. It doesn't work in matterscape. So, wolves come to the Netherlands, and that fence doesn't work, because wolves don't mind about our powerscapes. They don't know the rules, and if they knew, they would not stick to it if they can catch a sheep. So, we need these kind of fences. They have to work in matterscape if we want to have fences for wolves, because they're not part of our culture. They have a different powerscape. That's important to realize. But then, problem is, sheep owners, half of them, although they get subsidized, they don't want to install those fences, because then they commit to the government that protects the wolf. And they don't want to commit to that official set of rules, because in their culture they have another set of rules. So these fences work in matterscape, but they don't work in powerscape. And Mindscape, well, I don't think that many people are super enthusiastic about the design, the landscape beauty effect of this thing. So a lesson here is, an intervention in landscape is most likely to work if it works in matterscape, powerscape, and Mindscape. That's the biggest chance for success. It's not a guarantee. And if you focus in just on one of those, well, you might miss very important obstacles to success of your intervention. Okay, last slide. 1 minute, great. So, of course, when you start something new, you have this big list of promises. But it's just testing. We're going to work with this and see if we can meet those promises, or maybe not. I want to pick out 2 for now. One is very nice. So Chloe used this as a framework just to organize knowledge she already has about elephants in Zimbabwe, but she also used it to describe the perspectives of elephants. So elephants have powerscapes and mindscapes too. They prefer certain places. There is place attachment in elephants. And I think that's very nice of this framework. You don't apply it to human societies only, but you can also apply it to animal societies. And that works really great when it comes to think about coexistence. I think that's what we need. And we hope that this fosters interdisciplinary studies. There's a lot of talk about it, but in a systematic way, like a pre-disciplinary framework that can be used to connect different disciplines. And that was the alarm. Thanks a lot for listening.